It is Thursday, and it's another edition of Locked On Royals on the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jack Johnson. Let's talk about these red-hot Royals, and more specifically, Bobby Witt Jr. and Brady Singer, who headlined a phenomenal weekend against the New York Mets. And lastly, it is a six-game winning streak, but what does it mean? Does it mean anything for 2024, or is it just fun to live in the moment right now? Well, I'll tell you about my opinions coming up next on Locked On Royals.
You are Locked On Royals, your daily Kansas City Royals podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
First things first, we want to thank you for making Locked On Royals your first listen every day. And as you know by now, you can check us out on all those podcasting platforms like Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, and you can always find us on YouTube. Just be sure to hit that follow button and subscribe. You can also find me on Twitter at JohnnyJ_15. That's at JOHNYJ_15. Now, before we go any further, this episode of Locked On Royals is brought to you by eBay Motors. A championship team is about each player being a perfect fit. Same with your vehicle. So for parts that fit, head to eBay Motors and look for the green check. Stay in the game with eBay Guaranteed Fit. ebaymotors.com. Let's ride. eBay Guaranteed Fit. Only available to U.S. customers. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. As I'm sitting there watching the Royals cap off a three-game sweep over the New York Mets, and just the week before, or earlier this week, the Royals get a sweep over the Minnesota Twins. That was Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Then, of course, they take on the Mets, and they win Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Now we'll be heading off to Philadelphia for a three-game sweep. But as I'm watching these 6 games unfold, in which the Royals have won all of them, and they capped off a perfect homestand, an undefeated homestand for the first time since 2016, I'm thinking to myself, right, what am I witnessing here? Am I witnessing a team that's just hot, or are there some things I can take away? And these first 2 segments are going to be things that I really took away from these 6 wins. And we're going to kick it off with maybe the headliner of this 6-game winning streak, this 6-game homestand. And that is Bobby Witt Jr. Bobby Witt Jr. was not an all-star this year. In fact, he struggled in the first half. Walk numbers were down. K rate was up. Still struggling to get on base. The power was somewhat there from time to time. You've never really denied the speed. He's always been able to swipe bags. Defense got a lot better, but it was the offense that I'm just going, man, if he could just figure it out at the plate, you have a complete player. And now I think we're starting to see there is a complete player. And there's still some aspects to his game that he can improve. But I'm looking at his Baseball Savant page. I'm looking at FanGraphs. I'm looking at the MLB app. Every single metric, every single piece of data, the eye test is telling me this is not just a good player. This is not just a great player. I am watching a superstar in the making. And let me be very clear on that. A superstar. That's trending to be, maybe in the future, if this continues, if the trend continues and he can improve his play year in, year out, you are looking at a top 10 player in baseball. And for those that only really watch the 14 and 15 Royals, the years of Hosmer, Moustakas, Kane, Escobar, I'll be quite honest with you. There was no superstar on that team. That was a collective group of great players that all played well together. They came up through the system. They were fantastic. I would say the last superstar that they had that was an individual, like just couldn't deny the talent, probably Carlos Beltran. Maybe if you want to go on the pitching side, it was Zach Greinke because he had a Cy Young. I'd say superstar. To me, Bobby Witt Jr. is starting to show this is who he can be. And the scary thing for the rest of the league, he can get so much better. You know, the minute that he can improve his walk rate, I know many people don't want to hear about walk rate. Oh, it's boring to take a walk. The minute that happens, you are talking about a multiple-time All-Star. It won't even be a second guess. When you see Bobby Witt Jr. on the ballot, he's getting it. And it's only unfortunate that he wasn't doing this to begin the year because he would have absolutely been the Royals representative, hands down. It would have been easy to make that pick. But he wasn't playing as well as he is now. Last 30 games, he's been arguably the best shortstop in baseball, one of the best players in baseball. He's a top 30 player in total WAR right now because of how good he is defensively, how good he is on the base paths, and now that power and that bat is starting to come around. I'm just continuously amazed by what I'm seeing. I mean, today alone, he has this, starts off the game with a 107-mile-an-hour single. Couple innings later, he blasts a 430-foot home run. He's making web gems in the field. Like, this is a superstar in the making. And I'm tired of doubting that that's what's going to happen. I remember this very vividly, going back to the 2019 Major League Baseball draft. I was glued to all the reports, listened to every interview that you could have. And the constant I kept hearing was that this draft class is pretty talented. I'm not going to go as far to say loaded. Like this year's draft class, the one that just happened in Seattle, that was a loaded class. There's a lot of can't-miss guys there. But I remember specifically about the 2019 class. A lot of scouts were saying there are 2 can't-miss guys, and they're going to go 1 and 2. It was Adley Rutschman, and it was Bobby Witt Jr. And Bobby Witt Jr. took a little bit more time. Everybody knew that Adley Rutschman was more polished. He was a college hitter. He was one of the best college hitters in the game. And everybody understood that when you get Adley Rutschman, you are getting a guy you do not have to worry about. He is going to progress rather quickly through the system. With Baltimore over there with Mike Elias, the player development, the general manager, everything flows well together. That's a safe pick. He's going to be really good. And lo and behold, Adley Rutschman became really good really quickly. Already been to an all-star game, one of the best catchers in the game, and Baltimore is one of the best teams in all of baseball. But Bobby Witt Jr. to me was the pick that was easiest, of course, for Kansas City. And I've always believed the second overall pick in the draft is always the best spot to be in because you just take whoever falls to you, right? If it's 2 top players, we're getting one of them. There's more pressure on the number 1 overall team. Now, it sounds stupid. Well, why would you want to be number 1 overall? There are years that it does pay off. If there's only one can't-miss guy, you get first dibs at him. But in those specific years, you can't go wrong with either. But the number 1 team has the pressure because if they miss and number 2 shines, then it really comes back on them. It falls on their shoulders. But Bobby Witt Jr. to me was the guy that always had the bigger ceiling. And I promise I'm not just saying that because he's in Kansas City. When you have a prep shortstop with his speed, his glove, his power, his bat speed, the upside is far more immense, you could say. It is a lot higher than a college catcher. Now, Adley Rutschman last year, if you would have asked me, who's the better player? Who's going to have the better career? I think at that point in time, I didn't want to punt on Bobby Witt Jr. being a better player, but why would I go against what Adley Rutschman was already doing? And Adley Rutschman's still been really good this year. But now we're starting to see the freakish talent that Bobby Witt Jr. has. And he's only 23. He hasn't even played 2 years at the big league level. And this is why I really think it's important to look at all aspects of data when evaluating a player. I think a perfect example for the Royals is a guy like Nick Prado. When Nick Prado was on his hot streak, when he's hitting, none of the advanced metrics really show that was capable of being repeated over and over and over again. He didn't hit the ball that hard. He struck out too much. Even the walk rate wasn't as good as it could have been. Like Vinny Pasquantino, the advanced metrics showed he is going to be a good hitter. I urge everybody right now, after this podcast, to go look at Bobby Witt Jr.'s Baseball Savant page or just look out for it on my Twitter. I tweeted out a picture of what his Baseball Savant page looks like and how many times those red dots show up shows how good a player can be. He's in the 99th percentile in numerous categories. Expected batting average, exit velocity, max exit velocity. All these metrics that show it is sustainable as long as he keeps hitting the ball hard. And it sounds kind of cheesy because I made everybody fall for that early on in the season. The guys are hitting the ball hard. It's going to turn into wins. It didn't. But for Bobby Witt Jr., we're starting to see in those slumps when he wasn't going well, he was still hitting the ball incredibly hard. And now you're looking at a guy who is putting it all together. So when he's hot, when he's rolling, he's one of the best players in all of the American League. I mean, this is a superstar in the making. Now, it's about building on it. He's in the middle of a hot streak right now. So when he inevitably goes through a slump again, how bad's the slump? What's the reason for the slump? How quickly does he pull himself out of the slump? All of those are going to be factors. But the best thing about Bobby Witt Jr. right now is he's so good defensively that you just have to be average at the plate to be an all-star. You really do. But now he's excelling at the plate. He could very well have a 30-50 season. 30 home runs, 50 stolen bases, and he still could get a lot better. Like, that's why the ceiling is so high for him. He's a freak. He is freakishly talented, and it's now starting to show that, man, maybe the Royals are slowly building a really good core. Prior to the season, there was not a superstar on this team. I think we all wanted Bobby Witt Jr. to be, but he hadn't shown it in the first 4 months. Now we're starting to see this is not just a good player, not just a great player. This is a superstar in the making. It's up to him to keeping it up, adjusting, continuing to adjust. But, man, I'm blown away right now. And we're all feeling good. It's a 6-game winning streak. But the reason they've been playing so well, and what we said all year long, this team centers around him. He plays well. He's great in the field. He's great at the plate. The team usually plays pretty well. He's struggling. He's slumping. Team doesn't play as well. You have your centerpiece. Now he's starting to show he is a superstar. And I can't wait for what the future holds for a guy like him. I get there's going to be skepticism. He's this good. Well, no way the Royals can keep him. I'll tell you this right now. The Royals understand how valuable he is. And they would be foolish, and this could bite me in the butt, but they'd be foolish to not get something done this offseason because I believe he's only going to get better. Well, Bobby Witt Jr. was not the only superstar this weekend. He may be a superstar in the long run, but now you're starting to see a pitching staff find some guys that are showing we can be a part of next year's rotation. Brady Singer was great today. Cole Reagans was great yesterday. Let's talk about that coming up next on Locked On Royals. You are tuning to Locked On Royals on the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jack Johnson. Be sure to follow me on Twitter at JohnnyJ_15. That's at JOHNYJ_15. Before we go any further, let's give a shout out to one of our other sponsors today in Sleeper. I was 1 for 2 on my picks the other day. I got the Cole Reagans over on the strikeouts, but unfortunately, MJ Melendez did not homer yesterday, and he was the only hitless Royal today. So maybe that's the last time that I bet on a guy like MJ Melendez. And since there's been a lot of afternoon games already being played or being played, I can only have one true game to pick from, and I'm going to go with the Dodgers and the A's game tonight. First pitch will be at 9:10 p.m. Central Time. So Oakland, worst record in baseball now by quite a stretch now that Kansas City's won 6 in a row. They are 30-79. Is there anybody I want to bet on? Not individually, but Julio Urias is going for the Dodgers, and he has really been struggling since rejoining that rotation. I think that Oakland scores over 3.5 runs tonight off Julio Urias. I shouldn't be betting on Oakland, but I think I bet for Julio Urias last time out. It didn't do me so well. So I think I'm going to go with Oakland tonight. Maybe Brent Rooker, the former Royal, can run into one. But I think they're going to score more than 3.5 runs against the Dodgers' Julio Urias. The other pick I'm going to make, this one feels a little bit safer. I'm going to go with Freddie Freeman. I think Freddie Freeman is going to have over 1.5 hits, so just a multi-hit game for Freddie. Tonight, they'll be going up against J.P. Sears of the Oakland A's, so I think it could be one of those lefty-on-lefty crimes. I really love Freddie Freeman, and he is one of the main stars on that team, one of the best teams in the National League. I could have bet on Mookie Betts, but I'm going to go with Freddie Freeman tonight. So those are my 2 picks in Sleeper. Now, with Sleeper, do you agree with my picks? Do you think that the A's can get 4 runs tonight off Julio Urias, or Freddie Freeman will have more than 1 hit against J.P. Sears? Well, I sure do. And on Sleeper, you can swing for the fences with up to 100 times the payouts. All you have to do is choose 2 or more players that you like and select more or less on their stat categories like home runs, strikeouts, hits, and more. Get your picks right, and you could win big with Sleeper. We just discussed Bobby Witt Jr. And yes, he was the star all the way back to Friday night when he hit the walk-off grand slam off Johan Duran. He's making web gems in the field. He's stealing bases, now over 30 on the season. He's already surpassed his total, or I believe he is about to surpass his total from 2022. Superstar, superstar, superstar. But what has not got enough talk, maybe at least for me, I need to be a little bit better about this. This pitching staff was great. And I mean great in the series against Minnesota and in this series against the Mets. And I don't want to hear anything about, well, it's Minnesota. They're a very poor first place team. Oh, the Mets are not that good. They just traded away a lot of their best hitters. I don't want to hear about any of that. These are big leaguers, and the Royals have lost a lot of games, and this rotation has not had a lot to build on. But last night, Cole Reagan's his first start since coming back from Omaha, 6 shutout innings, a career-high 8 Ks, just 1 walk. Velocity still sitting 95, 96 in the final inning. How can you not be impressed with that? That's the Aroldis Chapman trade right there. And the Royals looked at a guy who's 25 years old, 2 Tommy Johns, not a lot of success at the big league level, and said, we like what we can work with here. And there was a great story done by Annie Rogers of MLB.com, covers the Royals on the beat, about Cole Reagan's. And when he came to Omaha, he wanted to work on his pitches, on his arsenal. And he's wanting to work on his slider and his cutter. And they're 2 separate pitches now. When he came over from Texas, it was just a cutter. And what does he do last night? He starts throwing those 2 pitches. The cutter's got more velocity, 89 to 90. That slider about 85, 86. And it worked perfectly. It set up the changeup down in the way. It set up his fastball high and in. It was the perfect mix and match. And Cole Reagan's did that because he worked with the coaching staff. He communicated with the coaching staff. And he was very coachable. That's what makes a lot of these guys better. You know who also was very coachable? Chris Bubich was. Chris Bubich says, I don't have a slider. I've tried to throw a slider. The pitching staff last year didn't let me. And Brian Sweeney said, why doesn't he have a slider? Let's use it. And we saw early on in April, he was the Royals' best pitcher before he went out with Tommy John. But Cole Reagan's, to me, is a guy that can only get better because of his coachability and the pure stuff he has, the spin rate on it. And coachability is a big part about improving yourself as a pitcher. It really is. Now for the other guy, Brady Singer. Brady Singer really does have, I think, a love-hate relationship with the Royals fan base. He's a first-round pick. He's a guy that had immense expectation put on him. First year, the COVID year, we're drooling over the stuff that he's got, the sinker with the 2-seam run. The next year, step back. He struggles. Last year, it's the best he's ever looked. Swing and miss stuff, the slider, the sinker, velocity up, looks like an ace. But he started that year in the bullpen. Then he made his way into the rotation. Then this year, really, nosedives. I mean, it was ugly. Incredibly ugly for Brady Singer. And the unfortunate part about it is everybody could kind of point to why things were not going well. Well, velocity was down. Wasn't really commanding his pitches in the zone. But it was the reluctance to throw the third pitch, the changeup. And last year, when he's interviewed in the clubhouse, I remember this to a T. That as he's standing in front of his locker and he's being interviewed after a bad start, and he's asked, well, why aren't you going to throw the third pitch? Why are you not throwing that changeup? And he said, well, if my first 2 aren't working, why should I worry about a third? I got to get my first 2 working. And yes, on the surface, that's correct. But you know how you get through the third time in the order? It's having that third pitch, that third offering. And now we're starting to see Brady Singer trust that. His coachability is going way up. He's willing to learn from Brian Sweeney, from Zach Bowe, from Mitch Stetter. And I'm not saying he wasn't beforehand, but it's also a lot easier said than done to change your ways, right? It's a lot easier to say, well, just go throw it. What's the worst that can happen? Well, he's a big leaguer making money and trying to go out there and win. Even if it's not working, you're comfortable going to those pitches because you can command those pitches. But in the last 15 starts, we've seen him be more willing to try the changeup, which is a result of kind of opening yourself up a little bit. When you open yourself up, you want to be coached, then you're more willing to try different things. In a season like this, an evaluation year, it's the perfect thing to say for this. You got to evaluate what you got. And this is why Brady Singer still has a spot in this rotation, because we know how talented he is. But I think a lot of it was holding him back because he was either nervous to throw the pitch or he just flat out didn't want to. It was the stubbornness. One of the first episodes we had here on Locked On Royals dove into that. That you can be a good pitcher. You can't be a good starter with 2 pitches. You can be a good back-end guy with a sinker and a slider. You can get that done. But when you're a first-round pick and people are calling you the number 1 and number 2 of this staff, that shouldn't be the ceiling. And today, he throws 9 changeups against the Yankees. I believe it was 10 changeups. Looked great in both. He had 10 strikeouts against the Yankees, tons of swing and miss, threw the changeup 10 times. Today, 8 shutout innings against the Mets, and he threw the changeup 9 times, 12 swing and misses. So to me, that's a guy that's now starting to get the confidence back. That's a guy who knows I need to have that third pitch. At least have the hitters think I have it in my back pocket. That's the important part of it. He throws the 2-seamer, the sinker, and the slider 80% of the time, 85% of the time. But if a hitter can go, there's a third pitch that he could throw to me here, that can change their approach. Just think about it. And I think about the start in Detroit at Comerica Park. It was in the first half, maybe June, might have been end of June. And he's out there, and every 2-strike pitch, you could see the Detroit Tigers hitters leaning out over the plate and just golfing into right field. Because they knew with 2 strikes, there's going to be that slider. If I'm a right-handed hitter, I'm leaning out. If I'm a left-handed hitter, I'm not leaning into it because it's coming at my back foot. I'm staying back on it. But you add in that changeup, you can't do that. Because if Singer can see the guy leaning out, well, I'm going to throw the changeup on the inner half. You're leaning out, you're going to get caught looking because your hands can't react to it right there. So that's the best part about Brady Singer right now. I could give a bleep about what it looked like in the first half. Now this is all I care about. Every single start, I'm going to keep a tally. I just go right to Baseball Savant, see the pitches being thrown. I would like to see at least 8 changeups per outing. You do that, I can be fine with what the start's looking like. But he was phenomenal today. 8 shutout innings against the New York Mets. Royals get it done. Another 3-game sweep. They've won 6 in a row. It was their first undefeated homestand since 2016. Now, because of that, I was getting asked on Twitter, well, does this mean everything? They always seem to do this. What can I take away from it? Well, I'll tell you about it next, coming up on Locked On Royals. You are tuned into Locked On Royals on the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jack Johnson. You can follow me on Twitter at JohnnyJ_15. That's at JOHNYJ_15. Also, be sure to check us out on all those podcasting platforms like Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, and you can find us on YouTube. Just be sure to hit that follow button and subscribe. The Royals have won 6 in a row. And I think everybody in Kansas City is loving it. You don't have to be in Kansas City. Wherever you're listening to this, wherever you're driving to, wherever you're watching from, I think we're all feeling pretty good. And if you're tuning in to Locked On Royals, I assume you have some ties to the Kansas City Royals. We're feeling good. You don't care that you're still 39 games under 500. Your team's won 6 in a row. And the beauty of that is that baseball can really just make you feel good anytime you win. No, the Royals are not competing for a postseason spot. They still had the second worst record in baseball by a handful of games. But they've won 6 in a row. And I'll tell you, I can't wait for tomorrow night's game against the Phillies. Because I want to see how long this can go for. How long they can continue this competitive baseball. But today, as we're all celebrating a 9-2 win, it was a blowout win once again. And it feels good to beat up on the Mets. It's not a great Mets team, but they walked into the season with the highest payroll in all of baseball, or at least the top 3 payroll in all of baseball. The Royals were bottom 10. So you just mopped the floor with them. Outscore them, I believe, 20-8. You're feeling good. You beat your division rival in the Minnesota Twins, a first-place team. Had the walk-off grand slam. You're getting great outings from Greinke, from Reagans, from Singer. You're getting Carlos Hernandez closing out games. Angel Serpa's looking good. Bobby Witt Jr. is looking good. MJ Melendez. Michael Garcia. I mean, across the board. The most fun 6-game stretch I think we've had in the last 2 years. I shouldn't say we. It's them doing all the work. We're just talking about it. But I'm asked this question today on Twitter. Oh, haven't we seen this before? Don't they always do this? Pump your brakes. It's the Royals. Let's not get too high on this. The thing about this 6-game winning streak is I believe you can approach it in the exact right way. I'm not going to ever spin a 6-game winning streak for a team that's 40 games under 500 and say, well, now they figured it out. Now go empty your wallet in the offseason and push for a World Series. It's not what I'm doing. I also believe, though, there's a time and place to be negative about a bad team. There really is. And I kind of have a mixture of followers on what people are positive about, what they're negative about. And for those that are always negative, I'll just simply give you this rebuttal. Right, there's a time and place you can be mad at J.J. Picola, Matt Quatrero, at the team. You can be mad at all of that. John Sherman, put them all in a basket. You boo them. You get mad at them. You curse at them. Do what you want to. But again, there's time and place. For the first 4 months of the season, there was nothing to smile about. Zero. Absolutely nothing to smile about. We felt good. Baseball was back on opening day, and then it was a turd tornado for 4 months. Just bad baseball. There were sprinkled in moments where it was fun to watch. You know, Samad Taylor, he gets a walk-off sac fly in his first major league game. That's cool. Dairon Blanco, a 30-year-old rookie, nearly hitting for the cycle. You know, Zach Greinke back on the bump for the Royals. Bobby Witt Jr. having a walk-off. I know that was more recent, but you get the point I'm going for here. There had been nice moments, but for the most part, misery. Absolute misery. And then you have this 6-game stretch for the Royals. And I don't think it's one of those scenarios where you spin it and go, well, they're really good now. Right now they're playing well. I don't think you need to do it that way. What you can do is just enjoy it, man. Just enjoy a team that's winning. We're all going to go into work tomorrow. And if the Royals are brought up, you're going to feel good to talk about them. You're going to want to talk about Bobby Witt Jr., about Brady Singer. You're going to want to do all those things. If you're negative all the time, I don't know when you want to be happy. Of course, you'll say, well, when the team wins, well, they're winning right now. And I do want to say this because I've been in the clubhouse a handful of times. I don't know the players personally, but I've asked them questions before, or just as media people do. You gather in a little group of media members, you ask questions. These are guys that day in, day out have to endure this season. They've heard the crowd boo them. They read what's on Twitter. So when I see this happen, I feel great for the players because we all have the easy job. We point fingers and get mad at the players, say, well, you're terrible, and I'm not going to pay money to watch you. You're an embarrassment. You're a disgrace. And I think they understand as big league ball players, they're representing a city, they're representing an organization, a franchise. They're paid to win baseball games. But it doesn't always work out that way. And they've had to go through a season like this. And a lot of these guys, they're not loafing around. They're working really hard. This coaching staff's working really hard. They've been outmatched in a large part of their series. Every single time they have just been dominated. But this time they're starting to flip the tables and they're playing really well. And to me, that's all I can ask for right now. I'm just living in the moment about it, man. It's a 6-game winning streak. It's been a long season. For 4 months of misery, if you've stuck with this team, it feels good to enjoy a good week of baseball. They've won 6 in a row. They'll try for 7 in a row tomorrow night against the reigning NL champs in the Philadelphia Phillies. Aaron Nola is going to get the ball for the Phillies, and it will be Jordan Lyles getting the ball for Kansas City. So we'll dive into that. And tomorrow's episode also going to have a Mailbag Friday. So I'll be tweeting out from my account at JohnnyJ_15 for any questions that you guys may have. I'm going to try to answer every single one of them. But until then, you take it easy, Kansas City.